Ah, October, the month of spooks, creeps, and asking candies from strangers, which, if in reverse, would normally land you 1 to 5. But in this uncertain times, going out and wearing a mask and asking for candy may not be the best idea, so what better way to celebrate the month of ghosts and ghouls than with some horror movies and video games? So, last year I focused on the Belmont's fight against Dracula, and I do want to revisit them, but I've had an itch to play some interesting games from my collection that'd be perfect for this. So our first stop at the beginning of October is none other than a little RPG Maker horror game simply known as Off. Off, man, I've known about this game for quite a while, way back in high school, around my junior year. This game was made mostly by one French artist going by the handle Mortis Ghost, the 2003 version most famous for games like Yume Nikki. I remember being really interested in this because back in high school I was studying video game making using programs like Game Maker and Adobe Flash. When I found out about other game making softwares, I downloaded it to my computer.
Legally. I mean, I know people who do.
And while I eventually gave up on working on those video game making ideas, this game always came back into my psyche. This unique art style, the interesting enemy character design, and do I need to even mention the battle-themed pepper steak? This beat is a real banger. The amount of times I would stop and just listen to the beat before railroading the enemy. And, oh man, I forgot this game is very wordy. Man, I didn't know I needed to be an English major just to understand some of the words here. Maybe I'm just too stupid to fully grasp the words. Let's go ahead and talk about the story a bit. There's not much, and it's obviously one of the main driving points of this 12-year-old game. Let's go ahead and start our crusade with Off. You're greeted with entering a name, but it's not for the character. No, you're putting in your name, the player behind the avatar. After that, you're introduced to the batter, an old-school dressed baseball batter who is on a noble quest to cleanse the zones of ghosts by purging them. You then meet the character referring to himself as the Judge. This big smiling grin of a cat, definitely inspired by the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. He then tells us, the player, about the world and how the game is played. As after all, the batter is a puppet and we are in control. They know we are here, but we can't communicate with them. After the beginning zone, you are off to this world map that's playing this uncomfortable music that plays in the background of hushed tones and soft whispers that sounds like what I hear in the middle of the night. But as you make your way to the first zone, you are greeted with these people in business suits and vivid colors of landscapes with ambient music tracks that are pretty consistent throughout the rest of the game. One of the interesting things about this world is that they have their own set of elements: steel, metal, plastic, and smoke, each claiming to be the first and most important element stating the laws of the universe, like if they didn't have smoke, how would you breathe? If there was no meat, then what would you eat? If there were no steel, then you would drown in a sea of meat? What? And if there was no plastic, then you'd have no boundaries and be able to walk to no end. Each of these zones have inhabitants that are workers that make up this world, and are timidly doing their work. In fact, they have a carnival section ride that is literally a bunch of chairs facing in one direction and made one of them sick. There are also these boss guardians that lord over each zone, that's treating them like the dramatized version one would expect from a boss of a spineless office worker. Nah, too easy. You find out that these ghosts and specter plagues these zones, and the inhabitants just accept them and they try to work around them, hoping the boss will eventually deal with the platform. Speaking as someone who had worked in multiple different environments, it's not actually that far off, where either you don't want to do anything about the problem and hope the boss will deal with it, or that one above and beyond person that can handle your problem as you just mind your own business and making a paycheck. I'm sure that Mortis Ghost had some kind of idea like that, but like any other art-like game, it's subjective. As Batter takes it upon himself to purge the land of the specters, freeing them from their problems, he notices how the boss treat their workers and that they, too, are unclean. Oh my god, this dude right here, Zachary. If you haven't ever played Off, chances are you've seen this guy at a convention. Well, maybe not right now, but this dude is awesome. He is another self-aware character that knows you're a player in this video game, and he is the obvious merchant that helps out the hero on this quest. I love this dude. As the game progresses, the judge no longer is helping us at a certain point, and Zachary takes on the dual role and tries to pass him off in a cat mask and meowing at us that he is the judge. How can you not love this goofball?
No.
I'm gonna put this up here. This is where the spoilers for the end of the game, so if you are interested, go ahead and skip to this point in the video as to not spoil it for yourself. As you get closer and closer to the end of the game, you are shown scenes of a sickly child in his room, which, as you reach the final area of the game, the room, you learn more about this child. By assuming his role, it's kind of a flashback to the events before you and the batter started your journey about a child with his mom and dad that is not able to really leave and is sickly, slowly growing resentment over his father. He reaches out to other people, complete strangers, for companionship, the previous bosses of the other zones. They then help him become the creator of this world, the zones you went to, and that these people that he put in charge were the reason why the world is like this. And though, while it's not stated outright, when you fight the semi-final boss, the Queen, supposedly this child's mother, she states that this child is yours. Whether she means you or the batter, I guess, is left up to interpretation. It's not like anyone else sees the player in this world other than the judge and Zachary, which makes the next part all the more gruesome. It's hinted at beforehand, but as you make your way through the zones and towards the end, when Zachary gives you the, well, there's no turning back point in the RPG, if you revisit the zones you purified, they are devoid of color, and that these world's inhabitants, from the mines, the residential areas, to even the work zones, are all gone. Only thing left are twisted creatures that are stupid strong, and the nicer music replaced with these weird musical tracks that come from the purification that you and the batter have done. Which leads us to the game's ending. You see a giant light switch that will purify the remaining inhabitants, but right before you throw it into the off position, the judge, who we are told from Zachary's name is Pablo, that we don't have to do this. We can undo what we have done, but we can stop before turning this world off. And the game gives you a choice. Do you side with the batter to finish what you started, or do you side with Pablo, the judge, and stop the batter from finishing his crusade? If you finish what you started, you get the canonical ending and turn the world off, and the game ends. If you side with the judge, you see the batter, how the rest of the world sees him as this big crocodile monster with giant hands and rows of teeth. This ending follows the judge as he returns the world that only now has Pablo and Zachary. If you go and collect all the items and beat the game's secret boss, Sugar, who, if you fight before the final boss, alludes to the batter's appearance, comparing to them as like a ducky. Sugar is actually an interesting character. It's a pure embodiment of the hidden fifth element, sugar, the dessert the workers crave that help them cope with their depression. After defeating her and getting the final piece, you turn them over to Zachary, who mentions that she was actually his ex-girlfriend, and states that it's for the best. But then puts the salesman charm and gives you the best weapon in the game, or a secret card that if you pick and then beat the game like normal, which gives you the joke ending with saucers and monkeys from space. This is apparently a reference to Silent Hill. I should check that series out at some point. That was definitely a sad and kind of disturbing set of events, and while this game's story is interesting for sure, it won't take you long to get through it in a few hours. While it's an RPG, at no point will you really need to grind for levels. Let's go ahead and get into that. The gameplay has a few battle segments where you play as the batter and a few extra party members, if you can call them that. Well, the game calls them add-ons, which is fitting, and will help you get through the encounters. And honestly, it's pretty mindless. Sometimes, as catchy as the beat is, the gameplay isn't engaging. I found myself just mashing mindlessly at the spacebar. Where this game truly shines, it's its puzzles, and I don't mean like block puzzles, no. I mean good old days of pulling out paper and pen, figuring that out yourself kind of puzzles. Games like Professor Layton. In fact, one of the puzzles makes you look at the README file to figure it out, kind of like looking at the back of the original Metal Gear box for Meryl's Kodak number. Man, I need to give this series some attention too. Other than that, this is a pretty solid game. It's a little bit of work to get this game to run nowadays, especially since it's that old RPG Maker 2003. But yeah, I'd highly recommend it to give it a try. It's free to download on the website, and maybe it'll get the same treatment as other great RPG Maker games and go on the Steam store. Well, the spooks are coming, and while this wasn't, I guess, a traditional horror game, it was very disturbing at points, and playing this in the dead of night was eerie. It's a good word for that. Let's jump into the next game in the lineup, American McGee's Alice the Madness Return. Go ahead and make sure you tap that subscribe button and smack that bell to know when the next video is out. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon.